Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
A little bit of music from Joe and Woody and the boys of the road crew there. Always great to get a little bit of road trip music from those fellas. You can take a listen to some of their other great tunes like Under the Neon at Route 66 roadcrew.com. Really great. Hey, if you're traveling here in the West today, surprise, it's almost summer. It just popped up on my phone that we have an excessive heat warning for the next week. I'm always amazed when that comes up. It's like it's a surprise. It's called summer in Arizona. Well, not officially, but close enough. It's currently 70 degrees here at the studios of Jim Hinckley's America within spitting distance of legendary Route 66. Looks like we're going to have our first 100-degree day here in just a couple days. Hey, speaking of road trips, we're going to have some fun this morning. We're going to be talking with Wade Bray about the upcoming AAA Route 66 Road Fest in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm really excited about this event. Hey, Wade, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been a bit since we sat down and had a visit.
It has. It's been too long, but we're going to be talking face-to-face soon, so that'll be fun as well.
God, I follow your exploits, and I'll tell you, boy, you're busier than a one-legged man in a behind kicking contest.
I try to keep myself busy, so I don't get in trouble.
I always tell people I don't have to worry about boredom. I think the last time I was bored, Carter was president. But
well, you and I share our history nerdery, and that there's lots of different ways to keep your brain engaged with that stuff. So I got lots of irons in the fire when it comes to that sort of thing, storytelling and history. So
yeah, I had a fellow last week. I had Jeffrey Schmidt as our guest, and he's done a great book. Speaking of Oklahoma things and history nerdery, he's done a book here today: Oklahoma's Ghost Towns, Vanishing Towns, and Towns Persisting Against the Odds. And of course, some of those were Route 66 communities. But what a fascinating book he's got out. Hey, speaking of Oklahoma, and of course Tulsa, Route 66, the Road Fest, just a few weeks away.
Yeah, it's sneaking up on us. We've been talking about this go round and finally getting you here for the event. It seems like forever, and all of a sudden it's just it's about 20 days away. So we're sneaking up on it.
I'm really excited about this. This is what, the second or third year for the Road Fest?
This will be the third year, and it's grown a little bit each year, and it's fun. It's one of those things. I've been doing events for over 30 years. I hate saying that because it makes me feel old, but it's true. And one of the things that you always say is, like, you never want to try to do something for everyone, because it's almost impossible to do. But in this case, this is a big event, and we've got so many different things incorporated into it that I can't claim that we've got something for everyone, but we've got something for pretty much everyone. We have almost 200 car show. We've got a lot of activities so the family can come, and plenty of things to bribe the kids with to let you get through the historical stuff, and 100 vendors from all over the country, some from your neck of the woods as well. And but my favorite part, because it's the thing I worked on the most, is what we call the journey, which is our historical exhibit about the history of the route. And there's really nothing else like it. It's kind of one of those things that it was really built to be a representation of the history of the entire route. So it's not specific to any state or city. It's really about the entirety of the route. And I'm really proud of it, and I'm just, every year I'm always anxious to get to see more people enjoy it and get to kind of skulk around in the background and listen to people talk about things they're seeing on the walls and hearing, and just kind of, enjoying the exhibit,
Well, it's kind of it's a unique event in the sense that basically you get a chance to have an authentic Route 66 experience, all the magic, the colorful characters, everything, the history, all in one package in one location in an indoor setting. That's kind of special.
Yeah, the best part of what you just said is inside we have air conditioning, which we probably don't quite reach the Arizona levels for summer, but it gets plenty hot here, and we've probably got you beat on the humidity. So it's definitely a nice way to spend a good portion of your weekend inside in the air conditioning and still getting to experience the route. So
Yeah, and you know what, the other thing I like about this is that you have done this for the family. And Route 66 should be a family enterprise. It really should, because that's what it is.
Yeah, it's one of those things when we started putting the event together, and especially when I started working on the exhibit stuff, I kind of went into it. My kids are all in their 20s now, but, not that far removed from them being younger. And I remember trying to take them to museums or, anything, and trying to keep them interested and, not have the meltdowns and all that stuff. And so I really tried to put this thing together with the idea of, if I was going to walk through this with my kids and my mom, how could I, provide things that would kind of catch the eye or give little pieces for someone to grab onto from, all those different ages and interests. And so, I'd like to think we've done a pretty good job with that. And it, like I said, the most gratifying thing for me, and it sounds really hokey, but it's true, is watching multi-generational, families going through there and watching grandparents talk to their grandkids and pointing to things and say, hey, we stayed in that motel, or this is where your grandmother and I went on our anniversary, or, whatever the case is. Everybody's got a story with the route, and it's not only things from 50 years ago. Last year I was walking through, and, we wear these staff shirts, and in the past they were this horrendous big bird yellow. So we're very easy to spot. And so I was walking through, and a guy stopped me and asked me a question. And I said, oh yeah. And I noticed an accent. And I said, hey, where are you visiting from? And he said, oh, I'm from Germany originally, but I live in Oklahoma now. And I was like, oh, great. Well, thanks for coming. And he said, this is so cool. And then he started telling me his story. And I said, well, what's your interest in the route? And he told me about, a few years back, he and his brother came over, decided to do the whole route. They rented a car or motorcycles, I can't remember which, in Chicago, and went, did the entire trip. And along the way, while they were in Oklahoma spending the night, they went to a diner, and he hit it off with this waitress, and they stayed in touch. And a few years later, he moved back, and now they're married. And so, a lot of people, I think of the route as this thing from the past, and it's like, the people that have these great stories from the route are in their 70s or 80s, or, this guy was probably in his 30s, and he's still got, a life story connected to the route that was totally life-changing for him. And so it's just so cool to hear the stories,
Yeah, well, to have an association with a highway when it was the highway, you've got to be at least 65 and older. But this is a living highway, and it's amazing to me. The first, the highway officially doesn't exist. And second of all, it's just a road, for God's sakes. But for somehow the work of Cyrus Avery and those fellas there in Tulsa that put together the U.S. Highway 66 Association in 1927, we're harvesting the fruit from their work. And this road is morphed into just something absolutely magical. It's just really astounding what this road has become.
It's definitely a symbol of America, and I think especially outside of this country, where people tend to have, you form opinions about places you've never been based on whatever you pull from the ether, and I think in this case, that kind of Americana that people have outside of this country, it's so related to the route, and just that the time period when the route was at, at its peak, and just sort of it was just a time where people talked to each other, and it was about community, and it was about the businesses along the route. It wasn't chains all along the way. It was a mom and pop next to a mom and pop next to a mom and pop, and those things have character, and the people that are working inside own the place, and they're invested in that, and they're invested in their community. And so I just think that element of Americana and that symbol is so prevalent outside of the country. I mean, I've met people in Scotland that have, I mentioned that I was from the States, and they asked where, and I said Oklahoma, and my standard response outside of the country, most people don't know where Oklahoma is, so I'll say, well, it's right above Texas, and so I said I'm from Oklahoma, and before I could even get the Texas part out, this guy in this bookstore in Scotland said, anywhere near Tulsa? And I was like, I was born and raised in Tulsa, still live there to this day. How in the world do you know Tulsa? And again, he was like, oh, my brother and I went over and we did Route 66 a few years ago, and we spent the night in Tulsa. It's beautiful. So again, it's crazy, I mean, it's absolutely absurd how, everybody knows New York and LA and Chicago and, Miami and all the places, but it's incredible when you run into people all over the globe that know Tulsa or Springfield or Joplin or Amarillo or, and that has everything in the world to do with the route.
Well, Route 66, the magic of Route 66, and it's not that other highways don't have this in pockets, but Route 66, it's the people, it's the community, it's the network. And I think that is one of the things that's driving this popularity. We live in a very generic, a very cold, impersonal. You have 500 friends on Facebook, and there's only 3 that you've ever had coffee with.
Right.
And here you sit down, you interact with people. You mentioned the international. It always astounds me. I was in Poland a few years ago, and a fellow with very poor English skills, but they were better than my Polish skills,
right,
was asking me about Imogene's Hollenberger in Victorville.
Wow.
If they were still serving breakfast, and telling me about this great breakfast he had. And I mean, where else can you find places on the road? And he was talking about the people he met in Victorville, how friendly they were. He mentioned Delvin Harbor there at the California Route 66 Museum. And it's just amazing how this touches people from all over the world. So the festival in Tulsa, I'm really excited to be, first of all, participating, but I'm really glad to see this event in general. I have a feeling it's going to inspire quite a few road trips.
I hope so. When I talk to people, all across the route and really all over the place, my standard line is, it's like the Road Fest is Route 66 for a few days a year. The whole rest of the year, the route is out there. And what we really want to do is inform people and get them excited about the route enough to get in their car and actually go see the real thing. It's like we have recreated, the gas stations and the diners and, all of these things. And it's fun, but it's no substitute for the real thing, And so we really hope that people come to our event and then, take that as their inspiration for actually getting in the car and going out on the road,
The personalities, that's another part of this that the Route 66 course angel, Delgadillo in Seligman. Here's a small town barber that literally changed the world and made great contributions. And your wonderful project here in Kingman will keep that going years after the centennial and beyond. Will you be incorporating any kind of that interactive work into the Tulsa Road Fest?
Absolutely. That's one of the, so I mentioned earlier being a history nerd, and I say that with great affection because I attribute so much of my life that I have enjoyed to the fact that I have this interest in history that has taken me places and allowed me to see things and meet people that I would not have done otherwise. But, one of the things that I really strive to do when I work on these projects like Roadfest and like the Angel exhibit there in Kingman is, I trying to make history relatable. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people's experience is similar to what mine was when I was in school, in grade school, middle school, and even in high school. My history classes were generally taught by a coach that was only doing that class because they had to teach a class in order to be a coach. And it was a lot of memorizing names and dates. And that's not what history is about. I mean, you and I have talked about this at length, but history is about people, and it's how it affects people and how people affect it and how, we react to the things that happen around us. And so I really hope that what we've created is something that tells those human stories and that we're presenting it in a way that people can connect to it on a personal level and kind of feel like this is what it would have felt like to be in this place in this time. And to that end, we have hands-on things, at the Road Fest, and we also have costumed actors that are in each one of our exhibits that are playing characters from that time and place that will engage one-on-one with our visitors and talk about what their life was like and what was going on in their world at the time. And, we have soundscaping in each one of our exhibits that play the music and maybe radio programs or TV if it was a time when TV existed, or movies where we really want to make it as immersive as we possibly can. And I really hope that when you're standing in the 30s, you're feeling that, you get a little bit of the Dust Bowl, you get a little bit of the gangsters and the craziness that were taking place along the route at the time. And, that's really what I hope. If people get nothing more out of it than that, I just hope they feel like they're living the history a little bit instead of just reading it,
Well, I think, a lot of us in school, I don't know how it happened, but history was presented to us often as something as dead and dry as a 5-day insurance seminar.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's living. You see it there in Sapulpa now, where they've got that they're taking people for rides on
Yes.
Route 66 in vintage cars. I had that. I saw that at the Automobile Driving Museum in El Segundo, something similar to that. And with the technology like what you created here in Kingman, where people can interact with Angel, using technologies to bring history to life and making things tangible, touchable. The Gilmore Museum in near Kalamazoo has started a Model T driving school a while back that got a lot of interest. And I think that's the key to keeping Route 66 alive into the centennial and beyond, is making it relevant, making it tangible, and making it real. I'm not suggesting we go so far as to create a Great Depression theme park and have people live under a bridge and get rousted at night by people with billy clubs. But
Right.
we can still make it an authentic experience and bring it to life.
Absolutely. And I think, the technology that's available now can do so much, but I think it's important too to maintain that balance between, utilizing that technology to the best that you can, but also maintaining that human contact and that human part of it, because, you can, and I'm doing air quotes that you can't see right now because we're not in the same place, but that you can do virtual walkthroughs of the Louvre or, museums all over the world. And that's really cool if, especially if you can't, get to the Louvre, and it's, but it's just not the same. And that's, so I think that, again, like we talked about with Roadfest, it's like, I want to make a really fun representation for people to come see at the Roadfest, and they're going to have a great time. But I really think of it as kind of the primer for getting them out in the car and on the road and seeing some of that stuff firsthand. I mean, I experienced it myself, when I built the exhibit. I had never been to Kingman. I'd never been to Seligman. I had done the drive. I'm trying to think. By the time I started this project, I've got family in Chicago. So I've done the drive from Tulsa to Chicago and back many times. So that part of the route I'd done, although not really in a way of I'm driving Route 66. It was just, this is where I'm going to see my family. And so I'd done it kind of unknowingly. But along the way, I've extended that. I've now gone to Amarillo and spent some time there. Last year when I came out to do the exhibit there in Kingman, I drove from Tulsa all the way there, and so I got to experience a whole huge chunk of the route that I had not been before. And you and I met in Needles, so I've made it as far as Needles. So all I've got left is Needles to Santa Monica, which I'm going to do here in the next year or so. But I did a lot of that exhibit by reading books by people like yourself and Michael Wallace and Joe Sonderman. And, I had done the research and I'd seen photos of a lot of stuff. And I felt like I knew it because I'd read a lot about it and I'd done the research and I'd seen the pictures. But, right, I guess really the day after you and I met for the first time face to face, when I made that drive from Needles to Kingman and, that Oatman drive, there's no way that you can get that experience across properly without just getting in a car and doing it. I've seen videos, I've seen photos, I've tried to tell people about it. There is no possible way that you can really get that experience without just doing it,
Well, it's like the Grand Canyon itself. You can see all kinds of pictures, videos, but you have to experience that. Something you have to see. You mentioned the Tulsa Road Fest inspiring people to discover Route 66. And Tulsa is an ideal location for this event because of what developments are taking place along the Route 66 corridor in Tulsa. You can the Road Fest is kind of an introduction. And then we can get them out on Route 66 in Tulsa. And if those two events don't inspire people to do more exploration, I don't know what it's going to take.
Yeah, I agree. And, this is my biggest project that I've got going right now, but I've got, some other things that you and I have talked about, what I'm up to, but, other things that both when it comes to the route, but also outside of that, where it's just, again, trying to take these principles of living history, really trying to make people feel like they're interacting, they're living it somehow, and there's an experience beyond just reading on a page or reading on a wall. And there's all kinds of terminology now, but gamification is one of those things that I'm really intrigued by, and working with some people on some projects where let's face it, I mean, kids are able to see and virtually travel to pretty much anywhere. They've all got phones, they've all got iPads, it's that technology is out there. But I do think that their actual hands-on experience is lacking in a lot of cases. And so there are challenges in putting this generation's kids in a car and driving for 12 hours because they're probably just going to be on their phone or their iPad the entire time. And B, it's tough for, a lot of things that are out there on the route are beautiful and they have the nostalgia. And if you know what you're looking at, you can really connect to, but that's not necessarily that easy for a 10, 12, 14-year-old to connect to, And so I think, like we talked about, kind of harnessing that technology to pull them into that experience, and for them to be able to go to those places and get something out of it in a relatable way instead of, hey, look, there's an old building. Okay, what's next?
Yeah, and I think the Road Fest would be a great way to do this. And this year, I mean, you've got so many aspects. Toshi Goto from the Japanese Route 66 Association, and oh gosh, I'm embarrassed, but the name slips my mind. The traditional Japanese performers.
Oh yeah, I think it's been Tenya.
Yes, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have them. Each year we always invite all of the states that are part of the route to come be a part of the event and set up in our what we call the Route 66 community area and be able to talk to people about what their state has to offer and what's going on, in their state on the route today. And it's so exciting to have them there this year, and just to represent that international element to it, because I think I don't think people realize the international impact.
Well, that's another thing about the Road Fest. This is an opportunity. I think once Route 66 is another aspect that's unique with the young people. Things like the Road Fest, the interactive exhibit with Angel. But if you can spark a young person's interest and get them on the road, I don't think you're going to have a problem holding their attention or getting them curious about other things. Once they stop at Buck Adams in Tulsa, or the Uranus Fudge Company, or
Yeah.
Grand Canyon Caverns, or take them to an authentic Persian cafe in Pasadena, the Hyder Baba. I mean, there's so much you can do here.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that's striking, even to me, and I'm from the United States, but you know, and again, because I was so familiar with the drive to Chicago, I mean, there is a difference in architecture and to some degree landscape between Tulsa and Chicago, but it's not drastic, I wouldn't say. But I mean, it's embarrassing to say, but up until I came out to Needles, what was that, 2 years ago when I met you for the first time and I was attending the info fair there in Needles, I'd never been to a desert, and so it was eye opening to me. I mean, you were very kind in giving me a tour of Kingman that first time out there and driving me around and showing me things. And then when I made the drive out last summer to do the install of the Angel exhibit there in Kingman, I drove from Tulsa to Kingman, and so I got to experience a lot of time in the car by myself, looking out onto those mesas and that desert. And it's like, when you think about starting in the middle of downtown Chicago and what that looks like, and then making that drive through everything that you traverse, going, making the way out to the west like that, you can only imagine what that experience has got to be like to somebody that's, from Germany, or, I mean, Belgium, or, some other part of the world, where not only, because if you drove that distance, from where they're from, you would have passed through 7 countries by the time you got there, but also just the incredible change in terrain and landscape. And it really is, I think, again, it just feeds that perception of how huge America is and how vast and expansive and different it is. I think it just embodies all of that stuff.
Another thing I like about the Road Fest being in Tulsa, and I've talked to quite a few people about this, and I think the big cities have really suffered in our marketing of Route 66. We've presented Route 66 as America's longest small town, and that the big cities don't usually fit that perception. LA, Tulsa, Chicago, St. Louis. And then you magnify that with real and perceived problems that we see on TV. And so people overlook the cities. I think that the Road Fest and what you're doing in Tulsa is playing a major part in changing that perception.
I hope so. I think Tulsa's really unique, and we're still, I think, kind of in that weird spot between being a big city by, like really big city by, those standards, and being a smaller town, in that, and not just in a population way, but in kind of a mindset way as well, and I think it does have a lot of elements of a big city. Now, obviously, I'm incredibly biased because I was born here and I've lived here most of my life and I love this place. But I do think that it's really unique in the things that it offers, in that it is a big city, but there's a lot of green here. There's a lot of grass, there's a lot of trees, which is not always something that you see in the city limits of a big city. But beyond that, there's still that kind of, I don't know, smaller town mentality. People here are generally very friendly, but it also has always embraced the route. And I've kind of said this phrase over the years of working on this project, but there are towns and cities that Route 66 goes through, and then there are Route 66 towns and cities. and not to be dismissive of any other place, but Tulsa really embodies that Route 66 city, because it's just a part of the DNA here. It's always been something that we acknowledged and honored and talked about, and it's only been enhanced in the last few years. I mean, the things that are going on 11th Street here, which is the most common segment of the route going through town. But I mean, it's just unbelievable, the developments and the acknowledgement of the route and its importance. And I think it's really great. And we're not the only ones. I spent some time in Albuquerque. They do some really cool stuff, and it's definitely a part of their culture as well. And so it goes all along the route, but I do think you're right in a way, like the Chicagos and St. Louis's and LA's of the world. I mean, there's certainly an amount of acknowledgement of the route there, but they have so much else going on, I mean, it's like they have so much more to offer. And so it's just one of the many things, and I think the advantage kind of the slightly smaller markets, and Tulsa being one of those, is that it really is a big part of what we are and who we are and what our history is about. And so I think it does give us a little bit of an advantage, but I do think that the state and the cities and even the smaller communities are really taking advantage of that in a way that it's great to see. It keeps it alive.
Yeah. Well, Tulsa, of course, with Cyrus Avery, being Tulsa, it's Route 66 is literally rooted in Tulsa. And so that, it makes sense. It really makes sense. As far as it being a big city, for me, any place with more than 3 stoplights is considered a big city. But that's another story for another day. You mentioned California, St. Louis, and some of these places. They have lots of attractions. But one of the things that Tulsa's doing, and the Road Fest is a big part of this, is it doesn't matter the size of the community, be it Sligman or downtown Los Angeles. Route 66 can be marketed as the portal, as the gateway to all of the attractions that make that community unique and special. And I think that's what the U.S. Highway 66 Association did very well in the 20s and 30s.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that, this thing that this small group of people set out to do very close to 100 years ago now, still really kind of matters. I mean, that initiative and that mindset and project, I mean, that's still viable, and I think that, we talk about it in the exhibits, and you've talked about it a million times as well, but, that transition from, the glory days of the route, I guess you could say, where it was much more about the journey than the destination. There was a point where that switched to how fast can I get from here to there, and that's indicative of so much of our lives and all our culture. We're in a big hurry always, and it's just about efficiency and speed, and you just miss so much in that process. And so again, I keep going back to this, but it was really impactful on me, the drive that I made last summer, because I mean, I had a deadline. I needed to get out to Kingman and get that done, but I wasn't in an insane hurry, and I scheduled it that way on purpose because I wanted to make that drive and be able to pull over and look at something if I wanted to, or stop and have a meal in one of these places that I'd read about. And, albeit I'm in a modern car with really good air conditioning and, able to listen to my podcast while I'm driving along. So it wasn't exactly like the days of, the dust blowing through the car and the heat, but I really did feel like I got, some of that flavor. And on the way back, I made even more pit stops. I took detours and went and saw things and got out and walked around, and it was incredibly, it was relaxing, I mean, it was just a great experience. And so, obviously, until somebody provides me with a time machine, I can't go back and experience it during that exact time period, but I sure felt like I got the flavor of it. And it did impact me in a lot of ways, not the least of which was, we had built this thing to try to encourage people to get out on the road. And, I actually did it, and I enjoyed it. And so it really kind of reinforced, again, you can have ideas about things, but you don't really know until you do it. And I did it. And I feel, even more justified in when I talk to people now in saying, I want you to come to the Road Fest and see this thing that we've made and have a great time. But I really hope that results in you getting in your car and actually getting out on the route and experiencing that stuff and seeing it firsthand, because it really is special. It's a special part of our history, and it's still there. So
It's the American story made manifest. It just
yeah,
really is.
that's perfect.
And another thing about the Road Fest that you've done so well with this, you're blending the past, the present, and the future, but you're all giving people a real Route 66 experience. And like we mentioned, the Japanese folks coming, Route 66 in the modern era is international, and it's all about the people. This is a chance to interact with the characters, the people from all over the world. This is a chance to really get an authentic Route 66 experience all in one location. I think that's kind of special.
It is, and I love the fact that we're kind of able to, again, we've got these pods set up. It's like there's it's more or less by decade. We combine the 70s and 80s, and we kind of combine the 90s to today. But, the 20s, the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s all have their own exhibit. And then we combine that 70s and 80s. But so you get to go through that, and obviously you get to see photos of things and read some history, and you interact with the people. And we've got 2 cars from each one of those decades in those exhibits, and there's walk through things like diners and gas stations and all that kind of stuff. And so you get that element of it. But I do think too, our vendors, we've got around 100 vendors, and they're from all over the country. And I think, that has that mom and pop feel. There's kitschy stuff, and there's food, and there's all of that kind of plays into what the experience on the actual route was like. And then we've got the activities. We've got we do a Pinewood Derby thing that we do in conjunction with the Scouts. We have Hot Wheels racetrack that you can go and grab a Hot Wheels car and race. We have pedal car races where, you can race, come get on these pedal cars. They're like glorified tricycles, basically. And we've got a track set up that you can run around. And we did that for the first time last year, and kids just went nuts over it. But one of the things that we observed was that the parents had to kind of stand there and watch. And so we said, after last year, we got to get some adult size things so the parents can race too. And so this year we've added that. So now the adults will be able to race with the kids, and that'll be good for bragging rights for the rest of the day. And, we have interactive stuff like hands-on, like art classes where you can paint a Route 66 painting and do that in a lead way. You can come and contribute to a big wall mural, take a small piece of canvas and do your version of it on there, and then it all pieces together to be a big mural at the end of the event. And and then we've got obviously a huge classic car show that we do, and we've got a vintage RV park that has been so popular that we're about almost doubling the size of that this year, because people just love to see those things. And so I really feel like, even though, again, it's inside in the air conditioning, but I do feel like we've kind of got all of those elements. You can grab a corn dog at the concession stand and walk through some history, and then go see a vintage RV, and then buy something from a vendor and go play miniature golf. And I feel like that really does kind of embody sort of all of the activities and all the flavors of the route from back in the day.
It's excellent. I assume, since you've always got the gears turning, that you're already planning a Route 66 Road Fest for next year, and of course, something spectacular for 26.
Absolutely. We're going to keep this thing going here in Tulsa, and the hope and the dream has always been to take the show on the road, and those conversations are still going. And so I really hope that in 25 we might be doing the Road Fest in more than just Tulsa, and certainly by 26 we would love to be doing a more expanded, almost tour of the event. But beyond that, we do evolve the show every year, and we've got some exciting stuff this year. We've updated things in the journey that I'm really excited about people being able to see, because we've got a lot of people that come each year, and so obviously we want to keep it fresh and give them new things to see. We've added some stuff in the activity area. obviously our event is really popular with the car culture people. And that's no different this year. And we have a special guest this year, Richard Rawlings from Gas Monkey Garage, who does, really cool redos of cars and had a show on cable for a while, and now I think does it on YouTube. But really interesting guy. He's going to be there with a custom vehicle that he's done, and going to meet people and talk. And he's a big personality, a lot of fun for that. And then we've enhanced our Green Book presentation this year, which I'm really happy about. That's a story that we feel like is important to tell. It's a part of the history, not part of the glamorous part, but something that does need to be acknowledged and talked about. And so we're expanding that this year with a really cool presentation. And my favorite part, and again, I'm kind of biased because I'm involved in this particular part, is our presentation stage area. And every year we bring in people to sit down and have one-on-ones. And this year we've been fortunate to have Michael Wallace each year that we've done this, because he lives here in Tulsa and he's very generous with his time. This year we've got some Jim Hinckley guy coming in from Arizona that we're very excited about. And our friend Joe Sonderman from St. Louis, who's always fun. And then Joey Medea, who is going to be doing a couple of different things that are going to be a lot of fun this year as well. An element of the story of the route that I've always wanted to tell on the presentation stage, but haven't had the right person or the right opportunity to do. And we're finally going to get to do that this year. And you're going to sit on a panel with him at one point too. So that'll be a lot of fun.
I'm really looking forward to this because I like I say, I've been told I can tell these stories for hours, even if I'm the only one in the room, and enjoy myself. But it's much more enjoyable when I get to share things and encourage road trips, tell people where to go. This is going to be the 22nd, 23rd in Tulsa.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yep, I can't wait. And like I said, I really encourage people to come and check it out. If if you were going to get out and maybe do some driving on the route anyway, maybe schedule it around this and make Tulsa one of your stops. There's a ton of stuff going on here, and lots of fun stuff to do. But I really do think that if you're even mildly interested in the route, I do think that RoadFest would be a lot of fun for people. And I definitely encourage people to go on the website, route66roadfest.com, and you can see all the different elements of what we're doing. And of course, there's the schedule on there for the presentation stage. So you can see when we're talking to each of the people and what the subjects are going to be, so you can get there and see the parts that you want. But, thanks to some sponsorship this year, our ticket pricing has gone down. It's very low. I mean, just your standard rate ticket's only $10, and kids under 12 and under get in free always. But we've also got discounts for seniors and veterans and AAA members, because of course AAA is the presenting sponsor for this thing. And so it's a very, very affordable way to spend, a chunk of your weekend in some air conditioning with your family and having a good time. So,
well, this another aspect of this that I really am excited about is that it is an activity, generational family activity. Like you mentioned, you can bring the youngsters and the great grandparents and have the family together, making memories and sharing memories. And
absolutely, that is the goal, and it definitely, you can see it in action. And like I said, that's probably the most gratifying thing of all of it for me, is to kind of watch that taking place and overhearing some of those conversations.
It's going to be very exciting, and you've got such dynamic people involved there with the Road Fest yourself. Reese Martin, Michael Wallace, of course, is well, he's a true pioneer in the Renaissance movement, the Route 66 Renaissance movement, and yeah, this really promises to be something just quite spectacular. I'm going to be curious because I've noticed a lot of chatter about the event in the international Route 66 community. And I'm going to be curious to see how many folks include this in their travel plans that's coming from overseas.
I sure hope so. We're going to go ahead and get our dates for 25 and 26 out here pretty soon, because obviously if you're traveling, from overseas, you're doing that, you're planning that a ways out. That's not something you do in a month or two. So we want to get those dates out and make sure that people are aware of when it's taking place. So, maybe for 25 and 26, they can schedule to make that part of their trip. And, I really hope that, it's a huge building. I mean, the SageNet Center at Expo Square, where we do this, is over 400,000 square feet. It's giant, and it's pretty full. But I sure hope that when people are there this year, instead of the Big Bird yellow shirts, we're going to be wearing some slightly more kind blue shirts. But they have staff on the back, and I really encourage people, especially people that are traveling, to come to our event, to grab one of us and tell us the story, because we love to hear that stuff. And it means a lot to us to know that people have traveled, a distance to come see our event, but also we just love hearing the stories, I mean, it just adds to the experience for everybody. So, grab one of us and let us know where you came from and what you think,
Well, when you have the dates for 25 and 26, a lot of our internationals, they plan on 18 and 24 months schedules.
Right.
And I will add those dates to the Route 66 navigation app. There's an event section on there, and I can get those events added to the app. You probably have already, because great minds think alike sort of thing, but 2026, 4th of July happens to fall on a weekend in 26. Yes. And it's also the 250th anniversary of the United States.
Right.
So I bet you we could put together one hell of a party that year.
For sure. Yeah. We, because of how busy our expo building is here in Tulsa, our weekend in June is kind of our locked in time, because they are literally booked the whole rest of the time. But we will definitely have a lot going on in 26. There'll be, the city has plans to do things, and obviously we're working in conjunction with them to try to tie in as much of that as possible. We really want people to be able to come in and, have the experience of their lives if they're coming in for the centennial celebration. There's going to be so much going on. And like I said, we try to update and add every year, but obviously this is, the whole intent of this thing when AAA came to us back in 2019, which is when this project really started. It was with the intent of building to the centennial and then really having, something special for that. And so that is definitely what we are looking to do.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot. It's way too far out, but do you think the program will continue after the centennial?
I sure hope so. There's been a lot of conversation about that. And, this is not an inexpensive event to put on. And, AAA has been, incredibly generous and, more or less put this on as a gift, to the city of Tulsa and to the Route 66 community. And I can't speak for them. I don't know what their plans will be beyond 26, but I sure feel like we have, really grassroots kind of built this thing from the ground, and we gain momentum each year. And so I sure hope that it's something that continues beyond the centennial, because, you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this with Joe, and, I think in a way, people have been looking at the centennial, and it's kind of like this countdown to the centennial, and, hey, it's a big celebration and we've done it. And I think you and I are definitely on the same page of, that's not the end. That really is the ultimate kickoff point. If we're smart about this, and the people that, that embrace the route and want to continue these things, I mean, we're going to have the eyes of the entire world on us in 2026 when we have this centennial celebration. And rather than making that the end of a project, to me, that's the ultimate springboard for what happens beyond. And so I hope, and I think that a lot of other people will see it that way as well. And hopefully that'll be our chance to really kick off, the next chapter of the story of the route.
Exactly. I do worry that there's a myopia that we see the centennial and we don't see beyond. And I think the what we need to do is encourage people and inspire them and stimulate them to think exactly what you said, that this is the beginning of another chapter. And the centennial is the first year of the countdown to the bicentennial.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the way we need to do this.
And the way I look at it too, I think, is that working towards the centennial, I mean, that's inherently a celebration of the history of, and I think that's great. I mean, we have a lot of history to share and a lot of great things to talk about and focus on. But I think that, what we need to really focus on is, yes, let's acknowledge the history and talk about all of the amazing things that happened in the past. But it's really important at that point, when we've got all of the eyes on us, to show, but here's what it's about now. This is what the route has to offer you today. And that's what's going to make it relevant going forward. The history is always going to play a part, and that's why it exists. And that's why we're talking about it and why all the rest of this stuff, moves forward. But there's a lot of exciting stuff going on along the route in all of these communities. And I think the Centennial celebration is the opportunity to show the world, hey, we are relevant and this is why, and here's the great stuff that you can come and do. And so come for that. We can talk about the history for sure when you're here, but you've got stuff for today that you can see. And that's really what I think will carry it forward.
Well, let's see here's a thought that popped into my head, and maybe we can spark that. If people are attending Road Fest in Tulsa on the 22nd, 23rd, and you're driving from the west, drop me a note, and maybe, perhaps, we can find ways to coordinate a meeting along the way, and perhaps we can expand on that and maybe find ways to get some sort of a small get-together, an event on the road with people in that community on the way to Tulsa.
That would be great. Obviously, we'd love to see as many people from both directions as we possibly can. But yeah, that would be amazing. I think, again, it's about community. It's about both the communities that sit on the route and also the communities that transcend the geography. And that's one of the things that's so amazing and so unique to the route, is that the Route 66 community goes so far beyond the geographic borders of the route itself. And that's part of what makes it so special. So
creating that sense of community and community purpose, fostering a network of cooperative partnerships, that's so important to Route 66, and it's what gives it its vitality. And that's why I'm really saddened whenever we have these divisions and fallouts and splintering of organizations, things of that nature. We need to be pulling together. I'll throw one more idea out there, though. If you are traveling Route 66 to the Road Fest, enhance that trip, whether you're a seasoned Route 66 traveler or new. Get yourself in the mood. At the end of the day, stop at a place like the Roadrunner Lodge in Tucumcari, New Mexico, and hang out with David Brenner a few minutes, eat at Dell's. Stop at see Angela Moreland in McLean, Texas. Spend the night at the Cactus Inn Motel. And if you're coming from the other direction, well, it's hard to beat staying at, say, the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri with Connie. And get yourself in a Route 66 state of mind as you're traveling to the Tulsa Road Fest.
I love that.
Wade, thank you for taking time for your Sunday morning. I know you're busy, and I always enjoy a visit. I'm looking forward to visiting in person in Tulsa and brainstorming and getting ourselves in trouble by cooking up some other odd dreams.
Absolutely.
But this is going to be such a fun event. I'm really excited to be a part of this. Tomorrow, I'll try to get it done by tomorrow afternoon, but I'll have a blog post on Jim Hinckley's America with details, links. The program today will be published on Spotify and other platforms. But I'll do a blog post on the Jim Hinckley's America website, jimhinckley'samerica.com, with what we discussed today, with links and some of my travel schedule plans, and see if we can coordinate something in these communities and along the way. And, well, we'll make it a real road fest.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I look forward to resuming this when we're in the same place again. So,
yeah, Wade, I've really enjoyed this conversation as always. It really sparked a lot of it piqued my imagination on a lot of things, and that's a good thing, bad thing for me, because I don't need a lot of help on that. Next week, speaking of Route 66, we're going to continue this next week at the same time. We're going to talk to Phyllis Ferguson next week. She has put together the Rockwood Motor Court from there in Springfield, Missouri. And I think that's going to be quite a little story to tell, too.
Awesome.
We want to thank everybody who joined us today. We had Teresa from the California Route 66 Association, Historic Route 66 Association, and Maggie May was with us from the Ransom E. Olds Museum in Michigan. We had a South Ozman. I would assume that we've got somebody here from Australia. Yes, we've got some comments on the Green Book inclusion. I fully agree that that's a part of the story. It's not a part of the story we like to tell, but we never get a good jigsaw puzzle completed if we pick out the pieces we don't like. It just doesn't work.
So
I'm really glad we're doing that. And gosh, we got Professor Nolan Stoltz with us this morning, and well, all kinds of interesting folks here. Once again, we'll do this next week. And if you're if you're kind of nervous about planning a Route 66 trip, especially if you're overseas, but in general, I got two recommendations I'll put out. Is Gilligan's Route 66 Tours. They are based in New Zealand, and they put together a first-rate guided tour on Route 66. But for Americans or people from overseas, they also are developed a very detail-rich self-drive tour option. It's as close as you're going to get to driving the road yourself, and it's almost like having your own professional tour guide in the car. And they've been working with Marian Pavel of Route 66 Navigation to create some custom items for their tours. And another is Route Trip USA. Those folks specialize in developing road trip holidays. And they're the owners, Stephen and his wife, are very, very much like me. They taste the enchiladas and they test the pillows before they tell people where to go. So there's a couple other options for you. But I'll have that in my blog post tomorrow, some more information for you. Wade, thank you. And I want to thank everybody who joined us. And, we'll do this again next week. And we'll get the show on the road. And it looks like the 23rd we'll have to do a program live from Roadfest, or at least from Tulsa.
That'd be fun.
We're going to have to at least do it in Tulsa that morning.
Sure.
Sounds good. Guys, thank you. And Wade, you take care of yourself, and we will see you soon.
Sounds great.
Bye-bye, Wade.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
My friends, take care until we meet again next week. And, we'll be talking road trips. I'm going to Springfield, Missouri next week. I think you're going to enjoy this. Until we meet again, my friends, adios.